Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and I go by the artist name People Pleaser. And, I'm going to tell you guys my story today and how it led to me standing here. But some of you may have heard this story before, so I'm going to do something a little bit differently today. And the company that I'm building called Shibuya is based on interactive storytelling. So we're going to try that with this presentation. It turns out you can make hyperlinks within presentations to other specific slides within a presentation. So maybe that'll give you a hint to where this is going. Okay, so let's say you're me and you grow up in a normal middle-class family and you have some interest in art, but still skewing towards pursuing something academic due to being raised by a somewhat traditional Asian household. Fun fact, my Chinese name is literally pronounced Dijen, and I was born in the year of the monkey, so in some ways I feel like I was always destined for this life. So anyways, I grew up, sort of putting art on the back burner, and then I worked my way up, got into UCLA, and then one day I'm sitting in my dorm room in my first year of college, and I'm bored and thinking about renting a movie to watch. So this is where the presentation is going to be a little bit interactive, and you guys are going to help me pick a movie to watch. So if you guys want to just reach underneath your chairs, there's going to be something under there. I'm totally joking. There's nothing under your chairs. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way, and we're going to just raise our hands. So raise your hand if you would rather watch Rango. Anybody? Just one, two. What about Drive? Raise your hand if you watch Drive. Yeah, it's a good movie. Me too. What about Wall-E? Popular choice. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Oh, okay. So we got some ape fans in here. Well, let's see what would happen if we watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Well, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you guys for listening, because I don't know what would have happened to my life if I watched that movie. So let's go back. The movie that I actually ended up watching was Wall-E, and I didn't know it at the time, but this movie would later pretty much changed my life. So after watching it, the story was so compelling that I fell in love and desperately wanted to be a part of this world somehow. And I felt so inspired that I basically dedicated all of my free time outside of classes to learning 3D animation in order to pursue my dream of getting a job at Pixar. And after 3 years of doing this, I applied to Pixar many, many times, didn't get the job once, but I did get an offer from a VFX studio, but the offer was immediate, so this meant that I would either have to drop out of school to pursue this opportunity or pass on it and continue to finish my studies. So if you had to choose between dropping out of university or getting your bachelor's degree, raise your hand if you would drop out of school. What about continuing with school? Okay, we got some. Okay, so, I, in fact, did drop out of school to take this short gig. And so what happened was the next few years would comprise of a constant search for job stability, and work in the visual effects industry is hard to find and especially hard to keep. So I went through numerous contract jobs, moved across many different cities, and just trying to acquire sort of the necessary skills to become a better animator. And finally, in 2018, I landed my first somewhat stable long-term job, and they provided me with a visa to work in the US. However, I think it was maybe a little bit more than a year after this job, or I was still working there, I got approached with the opportunity for a very short 2-month contract to work at Blizzard Entertainment. Now, if you work in the computer graphics industry, you would know that this is probably the holy grail of places to work. So it was a really good opportunity, but I was at this long-term stable job that I had worked so hard to get to. So here's again another sort of crucial decision point in my life. Would you raise your hand if you would stay at the full-time job, truthfully? Really? Only 3 people? Okay, what about if you were to quit your job and take the contract? You can do both? Yeah, we can. So let's see what would happen if we stayed at the stable full-time job. Well, so that studio ended up closing 2 years later anyway. So I think I would have ended up jobless. So that's what would have happened if I had stayed there. So let's go back. I did end up quitting that job just to take this Blizzard job. I mean, Blizzard's awesome, right? So my time at Blizzard was short and sweet. I worked on the Diablo 4 cinematic and watched this premiere at the BlizzCon in 2019 and watched the audience's reaction, and it was really, really awesome. And I think this was the moment that made me realize that what I was really passionate about wasn't just what I thought was working on animation in general or working on the next biggest Hollywood film, but what I really was sort of in love with was how this form of storytelling made people feel. It didn't matter if it was 2 hours long or 30 seconds, it just mattered if it made people feel something. So anyways, my contract came to an end, and after 2 months, I was once again unemployed, and it was essentially this decision alone that began my sort of prolonged period of unemployment. So about 5 months in, I was still applying for jobs and constantly getting rejected, and then almost caught it. Like I applied to a job at Apple, got the offer, but then I didn't know that a pandemic would happen, which would cause them to rescind the offer 1 month later. And once again, I'm still on this jobless journey. So in the following months of unemployment, what did I do? Well, I started to make artwork under the pseudonym pplpleasr, and I was casually browsing crypto Twitter during this time, and I realized there were all these super interesting narratives and culture around crypto and DeFi, but none of which were being told in the form of animation. So one, I saw this as an opportunity to create some work for myself, and two, I started using this as a canvas to direct my own little 30-second short films that I was collaborating with these DeFi protocols on. Now, every time we would make a video, it was purely for the purpose of posting to Twitter for marketing. And every time we posted a new video, more people started paying attention to my work. By the time that I got to making the Uniswap animation, NFTs had become a thing, and it was like this giant tsunami that was happening alongside DeFi that I couldn't ignore. And I really wanted to be a part of this movement too, but I was too busy making Twitter videos for a living. And so purely making animations to post on Twitter was a formula that was safe and had always worked for me. But that also meant that I was sitting on the sidelines watching other artists thrive in the NFT space. So had I ever put up any NFT for auction before, and it was really scary to think about letting the market decide on a price for my work, right? So I would then come to another decision point where I was trying to decide if I should mint this as an auction, which was scary, or just stick to posting Twitter videos. And I mean, we probably all know the answer here, but raise your hand if you would rather mint the NFT for auction. Okay, it's pretty unanimous. So yeah, I guess my video must have made people feel something because it went viral and it sold for a lot of ETH. And I can still remember the feeling of logging onto Twitter that day and reading everybody's reactions to this specific animation. And it really reminded me of back when I was at BlizzCon and watching people's reactions to the Diablo cinematic, except that back then people were cheering for something that I was just a really small part of, and this time it was something that I directed. So it kind of sort of opened my eyes to my newfound love for directing things and telling story in a longer form. The auction had obviously gone very well and was the genesis of Pleasr DAO. We have probably a few members in the audience here. And it also kicked off an entire movement of crowdfunding and DAOs that year. So what happened last year with NFTs just kept trending upwards, and with my newfound NFT fame, I continued to get mainstream attention. And during this time, I received advice from a lot of people to sort of seize the moment, make connections with collectors and galleries, and this lightning in a bottle moment isn't going to last forever. You should sort of monetize all the attention that you're getting. But while it was really tempting to cash in on this momentum, something just didn't feel super right to me, and I wasn't totally sure because I felt like my calling wasn't just to sell individual pieces of artwork. I really think that my heart was sort of drawn towards long-form storytelling still, back to sort of how I felt when I watched WALL-E. So would you guys have taken advantage of the NFT bull market and sold art? Raise your hand if you would do that. I mean, I wouldn't blame you if you would do that. So let's see what would happen if we took advantage of that. And I guess this would be my life. Probably wouldn't have been a bad one, but that's not the path that I chose. So I did, in fact, take a pause to just think about my career. Well, what was I spending this time thinking about? I was thinking about the attention economy a lot. And I was also thinking about how incredible it is that in an era where our attention spans are constantly shortening, we still dedicate so much of our time to watching movies or TV series, music videos, basically longer form storytelling. The problem is this type of content is extremely time-consuming and expensive to make. And it's obviously not practical to spend all this time and effort making something and then selling it as a one-of-one NFT. That's not very, it's just not practical. And so I was thinking about how we could combine sort of Web3 technology with this type of storytelling. And currently, when you spend all this time, money, and effort into making a short film, you have a few options. One, you can seek traditional means of funding, which often takes a long time. Or two, you can sort of bite the bullet, fund it yourself, throw it into the film festival circuit, and see what happens. So I'm always looking to sort of innovate and push boundaries. And around this time, I also felt like the NFT market was already oversaturated with profile picture projects and people selling artwork, none of which were particularly inspiring to me. So a desire formed within me for a space for long-form content on the blockchain. And this is where the idea of Shibuya came to me. It's named after Shibuya Crossing in Tokyo, and it's a Web3 experiment where longer form content is free to watch, but monetized on the blockchain to incentivize further development as well as viewer participation. It's basically a culmination of everything I've learned in my career thus far, from anything from crowdfunding to monetizing engagement to empowering creators. And so the first film and series that I am doing on Shibuya is a passion project that I'm co-directing with Moshe Kuchiyara, and it's called White Rabbit. And White Rabbit is a Web3 interactive series about the journey of going down the crypto rabbit hole. It's metaphorical, of course, and the short film follows Mirai, who is the protagonist, embarking on a journey to defend the blockchain. And the general themes explored are self-sovereignty, freedom versus illusion of choice, and it pays homage to many themes in our industry. It's about building new types of governance and economic freedom, and there's a lot of Easter eggs and symbolism if you know to look for them. It's basically like anime meets Black Mirror meets Love, Death, and Robots meets crypto. So the concept is simple. The pilot episode ends at a point where the main character comes across two doors, and behind each door is an alternate ending. And the audience are helping to vote. In order to watch one, you have to vote. And just like we're doing in this presentation, instead of voting with your hands, you're voting with an NFT. So the act of minting an NFT simultaneously funds the development of this animation, while the act of voting is helping to shape the general direction of the story. Okay, so my entire journey sort of started with this dream of working at Pixar, and then while I never actually got to realize that dream, sometimes life takes you down super unconventional paths that lead you on outcomes that far exceed your expectations. And so instead of making movies for other people, I now get to make my own movies, and here's the main character of White Rabbit on Vogue magazine earlier this year. White Rabbit was also playing in real-life Shibuya Crossing screens. I also got to recently meet the mayor of Shibuya, and we had meetings with their government. They're very stoked that we named our company after them. We got to make some memes together, and that was really cool. And yes, there were many times during these years that I was disappointed that I never got to realize that dream of getting that job at Pixar. But sometimes life gives you something better. So for example, because Web3 has opened so many doors for me, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Bob Iger, and he has seen the first 2 episodes of White Rabbit. And we even had a conversation where he told me that he knows my story started from watching WALL-E, and then he told me about the creation of WALL-E, which was super cool. So all this is to say that you never know where this crazy path of life is going to lead you. And with that, I will leave a quote from Steve Jobs, which I think everybody in this room can highly resonate with. So the quote is, "You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path." And so, ironically, me standing up here and talking about the Steve Jobs quote today is a direct result of me not getting a job at Steve's company a few years ago. But because of that, I was able to pave my own path, start a company, and combine a wonderful new technology in Web3, as well as my love for storytelling. So I don't know, hopefully this will continue to inspire all of us to continue building what we believe in and pursuing our dreams as founders. So thank you guys for listening. And last but not least, I'll show you guys a short clip of White Rabbit.